Okay, so the next question is, how can you talk to parents about reproductive rights?
Yeah, that's a very important question,
Yeah.
and one that we've been challenged in the sense that we're trying to have this conversation with, for example, the African immigrant community, that of course finds this to be a very taboo topic. And in some cases, one, they're almost like, this should be inherent, right? Like the understanding and the exercising of human rights and reproductive rights should be inherent. So why do we need to talk about them? And why do we need to teach them? Why do I have to sit here and have a conversation with my child, for example? I think those are some of the challenges that we come across when we're trying to explain to parents and other, even community leaders or just older people that are sort of, we need their buy-in to be able to speak to the youth. And that means that we really, getting their support is very important. And sometimes it's a matter of, for example, in the African community, we know that every parent is concerned about marriageability of their child. Everyone, marriageability is like number one. Just there's no conversation more important. So, so what we find is if we can explain to folks that understanding people's reproductive rights and sexual health and how to take care of it is a very important conversation for helping prepare our young people for marriage. It won't help if they have this conversation the night before their wedding. That is a very useless conversation.
Yeah.
But, but that is what people think. And sometimes people expect that, well, when they get married, their spouse will teach them. But what if neither of them got the education? None of the people in this relationship know what to expect after marriage. And so what happens is we end up having a lot of undue pressure on the youth and on newlyweds because we have these very crazy ideals for how our children should be like sort of protected from the truth. But the reality is that not only is this very important when you come to get married, it's important throughout your life. These conversations, how to navigate relationships, whether they're friendships or they're professional relationships, all of those are still very important conversations to have, and in a very important tool for everyone to be able to reach out to, or reach out for rather. So I think that's where we really connect it for parents in sharing with them how we're trying to protect the youth as much as you are, but we understand they need this information in order throughout their life, like throughout their growing up phases, so that they can be better prepared for the future as well. Whether there's marriage involved or not, or there's children involved or not, they still need to be able to take care of themselves.
Okay, so essentially just trying to get the older generation to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. Like you have to be able to convey to the younger youth that like you need to be aware of these situations.
Right. And it's not something that we like, not everybody knows this inherently. I think there's this belief in the community that this is just like, oh, it's common knowledge. Everyone will find out eventually. And you're like, how do you think they're going to find
Yeah.
out?
Yeah.
And how do you want them to find out? Because yes, they can find out from many different resources, but if the information is inaccurate, then you're also doing them a disservice.
Yeah, it's dangerous too, so I can understand that. All right.
Really.
So the next question is, what is Sauti Yetu's approach when talking to women about the reproductive rights?
So our approach is really to meet people where they are. And so I think the resource, our main resources that we've been providing, through the community wellness department has been our sexual and reproductive health workshops where for the youth as well as adults. And now we are also providing individual health education. And the main thing and the reason that we find that we need to do this is for the community in general. Like this is really open for folks in the Bronx and throughout the city. But we find that it's important because there are a lot of evidence-based programs and educational curriculum that talk about sexual and reproductive health, but they don't always talk about it based on people's lived experiences. And so we created our curriculum from, we adapted it actually from the evidence-based program. It's called It's All One curriculum. And this was one that's created for a worldwide audience. And what it allows, and the reason we really value it, is that this curriculum is very different in that it allows everyone to take the information that we teach about your reproductive health, about your rights, about how to communicate and make decisions, all of those things, and put them within a context that you as the person in this workshop, or you as the person who's getting this one-on-one education, can translate into your own life. Because I can tell someone, if someone, we shared this a lot, you just tell someone, well, listen, if someone's making you uncomfortable, just leave the situation. Not everyone can leave, right? Everyone has different levels of power. They have different levels of privilege. They have different relationships with people. Everyone's situation is so unique to them that we focus on giving them what are the tools and the resources that are available. Then you pick and choose what works for you. As long as you have a plan that works for you, that's what's important from this whole bit of education. It helps that we place it in people's realities. We know we have, goodness gracious, we've got every, I don't know about you guys, but we get a lot of crazy stories from community members of sort of what their life is. This is their day-to-day in and out. It looks very different from what my life is, what maybe some of the people I know, some of the people I work with, looks very different. And so to be able to provide them with a resource that doesn't speak to where they're coming from is not very helpful. So that's really our approach, is to just say, like, here's the information. This is, like we said about reproductive rights. These are reproductive rights. This is what they are. And then our approach is to say, take them, see what you have access to, what don't you have access to, and what are you going to do about it? You figure that part out for you. What works for you? And then we're here to really support people as they make those decisions, and really work on bringing those things to fruition in their own lives.
Got you. So essentially providing them with the information and letting them make the own change. Okay.
Exactly.
I get that. So the next question is, what would you say is the ideal age to talk to women about reproductive rights?
I have a 2-year-old and I want to say like 2.
Nice. Understandable. As soon as, yep, I can get that.
As soon as they understand that human beings have relationships with other human beings, we need to start helping them understand what's okay, what's not okay. And we do this great thing in the workshop where, so our workshop series, we created an animated video series that we use within the workshop. And it kind of works just like a series. So you're watching like these characters go through their own life story. And then we sort of comment and have more discussions about their decisions. What did you think? Did so-and-so make the right decision? Did they make the wrong decision? And so there's this one episode where this mother is trying to have this, reproductive health talk with her daughter. And she comes in and she just starts by saying, remember that conversation about good and bad touching? And the daughter's like, yeah, this is what you said good and bad touching was, right? Like, we can start teaching that at a very young age so that children are aware, because we know very young children can experience bad touching and not know what to do in that situation because you've never warned them. You've never had a conversation about what this could look like. So I'm a proponent of educating them as soon as, as early as possible in what they can understand, what nuggets they can get. And then as we move on, so the conversation in the video goes on, the mother then moves from like, okay, good and bad touching. So then she's talking to her 17-year-old daughter and she says, well, what about puberty? Do you remember what that is? Her daughter says, yes, I remember. This is what happens to a girl's body and a guy's body and X, Y, and Z. Her mom's like, okay, good. And she's still leading her in this conversation, really to then say, listen, you are now 17. You're you're a very mature, grown woman. And now you're in a place where you're making decisions for yourself. And I need you to make the right ones. And so if you're going to be involved in romantic relationships, what decisions and what sort of things do you need to keep in mind as you start to navigate these relationships with other people. So if your romantic relationships, so, in this particular case was a young girl who had a crush on a guy and they were trying to like figure things out. But it's just that like, it was a great example of just that step-by-step conversation, what that could look like. So when they're 10 and 11 and 12, maybe just the puberty part is sufficient for them to know how their body's supposed to work, how the other sex's body is supposed to work. And then you sort of grow with them and have more in-depth conversations as they grow as well.
That's so freaking cool. Oh my God. Like the fact that you have like a whole animation like showing like just even the entire situation of what it would feel like as a parent to talk to a child about that. Because I know like that's a really awkward topic, like super duper awkward because,
Right. You don't want to be there and the parent doesn't want to be there.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that's honestly, that's one of our approaches too, is to just to remind folks that if you don't have to have this awkward conversation with your son or your daughter, let us come in, we'll do it for you. You'll make sure they're getting correct information. They're getting it in a space that's like very protected and respectful. We're not judging, none of that. And then, you can rest assured they're going to come home with the right information.
That's cool. Like, I think that's so cool. So like, especially like kids in high school, kids in middle school, like that's like the perfect opportunity for them to safely know about that information. It's not just rumors. It's not just, oh, if you do this and that. It's like, it's straight up reliable information that can be relayed to, youth. And I think that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we really like our video series, and it is something that is proprietary. So like only at this point, only we can come and facilitate the workshop series. So we always share that we have it. We'd love to be able to come and present it. You can't find, I know people come, they're like, I found the video series on YouTube. I was like, no, you can't find it on YouTube because it's only in our repository.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on to the next question. What are some of the reproductive resources available to your clients?
Yeah, so I think we touched on that a little bit with the workshop series, certainly. And I think I'll share a little bit more at the workshop series because we tried to make it as real as possible. And that means that we incorporated, because we had done surveys, we had done focus groups, we had had a lot of conversations with young people about what they needed in a sexual curriculum, a sexual health curriculum. And then we came and combined that with this evidence-based curriculum. It's been doing it for quite a while. It's effective. We know that it's effective. And then making sure that, like I said, we're meeting people where they are. And so some of the examples that we give, even just in the video series, is, friends are asking each other for relationship advice, right? And some friends give really good advice and some friends do not give the best advice. So we see that. We have conversations about who do you trust? Who do you go to? So when we're having a talk about communication and decision-making, all of that relies on the fact that you have a support network. You have someone to go to when you're trying to make a decision. They're giving you the best advice, but you're making, at the end of the day, the best advice for you. What makes you happy? That's the purpose of this. And then at what point do you need to sort of revise your initial decision and say, okay, now this is what makes me happy, because that's absolutely okay. Everyone changes their mind. So trying to steer people away from peer pressure, community pressure, cultural pressure, gender roles, all of these things that we know play such an important role in everyone's life and sometimes can affect us more than we want them to. So it's just a matter of letting people know what their options are and helping them exercise the best way they want to live. And so we do that as on a whole the conversation with larger groups of people. So we do this through workshops at schools, at faith-based settings, at community-based centers. And then we also, one of our newest resources is providing that similar conversation, but on a one-on-one setting. So if someone wants to call us and say, listen, I'm interested in having conversation about my reproductive health, but I don't want I don't want to sit in a whole setting. I would just like to do a one-on-one. That's something that's absolutely available and can be scheduled on, whenever the community member is available with our health educator in both English and French. And so that, yeah, those are some of our main reproductive health resources. In terms of getting the actual care, so we've built partnerships with, as I mentioned, a lot of healthcare clinics. We've been working for quite a while with, when we think sexual health, we think Planned Parenthood of NYC. That's sort of one of the first places that we would share, especially if they want that service confidentially. But if we're talking to youth, many of them could go to their school-based health centers. Now school looks very different. But those are just some of the resources, as well as some of the clinics, some of the, we've been working more closely with the New York City. So clinics-wise, we're thinking about the federally qualified health centers that, anyone can go regardless of status, can get the information or can get the care that they need, and they're billed on a sliding fee scale. And then, as well as more recently, we've been working with the New York City Health and Hospitals to get people enrolled in NYC Care so that they can actually have, they're part of a program, a coverage program that can allow them to see like a primary care provider. They can see an OBGYN, they can see, they can get health care not on an emergency basis, regardless of their immigration status, regardless of their income. And those are, I think, some of the very important resources that we have. We know we're based in the South Bronx and right by the 3rd Avenue Bridge. And so a lot of our community members that are going to make the trek out there are going to go to like Lincoln Hospital, for example. So it's great to know that, listen, we can help direct you there, as well as get you coverage so that you're part of a program that can, that, okay, this is my primary care doctor. This is how I can get the healthcare. I can call and make an appointment. I can get my meds. I can get whatever I need. And it's much more smooth that way versus relying on the emergency room, emergency Medicaid, or some of the other resources that was really all there was available before.
That's so cool. I'm sorry for all the stuttering, all the nerves and stuff, but like your program is like really cool. It's super cool. Oh my God.
I appreciate it. I mean, I hope more people think it's cool too. We're always trying to reach out to the community. So
definitely. I mean, hopefully this reaches as many people as it can, because this is a lot of information, like super scary to go about, or super nervous and stuff. So this is why I like doing this stuff too, because a lot of these programs do so much that I feel like actually like could help the community. Or like even when I was growing up, or in middle school and high school and stuff, you're eventually going to hear something that doesn't sound right, or you're not going to know whether or not if it is correct or not. So I feel like a lot of these programs, including yours, is a great opportunity, even though it may sound a little weird or whatever. It's a great opportunity to go there and actually experience it for yourself and get reliable information. And that's what's the most important part, reliable information. So I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I will say, I think there's like, as much of those services are available, like even ours, I think people have experiences with like, for example, not finding help in their language, long wait lists, because you can call a place and they'll be like, yeah, we'll get back to you. They're inundated. A lot of our nonprofits are small. They're like limited in scope. They can only do so much. They can only help so many people. So it's important to certainly reach out, but to know that some people do face those challenges, and then they're just like, well, there's no need in reaching out again. And that's unfortunate. And that's what we're hoping, and we're trying, especially now that we can do a lot of this work remotely, we can reach more people, and our capacity is not as strained as it used to be.
Definitely. Okay.